Hey, what's up? I'm Joel Madden, and this is Artist Friendly. On this episode, I'm talking with singer, songwriter, and guitarist Bobby from the punk duo Bob Vylan. Let's go.
I'm smoking on piff, that's my kind. I don't want no bad times. I don't want to have bad.
Won a couple trophies though now these days.
A handful, yeah.
You got some trophies stacking up.
We've worked to get it to a point where you can't really deny it anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you do deny it, then that's kind of addressed, you know?
Right.
People wonder why. So I think like that's kind of like where it's at the moment. And so they're kind of forced to include us in certain things. Whether or not they want to is a you know.
Which also kind of feels good.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I suppose, yeah.
You grew up in England?
Yeah.
In London?
So yeah, kind of so I grew up between London, East London, and a place called Ipswich, which is like hour and a half out from East London.
Is that a huge part of your perspective of music?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a huge part of my perspective just in life in general, because like Ipswich is kind of like a small town. It has its problems. And London obviously is a big city, and East London is just such a like culturally diverse place. And so I kind of got the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? I feel quite fortunate for that, because some people just grow up in a city or they just grow up in a town, or maybe even smaller in like a village or something, you know? And the idea of leaving any of those places seems scary to some people, you know, if like they're not exposed to anything different at a young age. And so I think I was quite lucky that I got to see both worlds and both sides of things, and it kind of like made me adventurous and you know, like kind of felt like I had a more well-rounded perspective than maybe some of my peers that didn't have access to the city or didn't have access to the town. You know,
was it your parents that allowed you? What was the access that, like, what allowed you to have the access?
Yeah, I guess like, you know, just like, you know, my mum was in Ipswich and my dad was in London.
Oh, so you were back
like,
and forth.
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, so like holidays and weekends and stuff, I'm going to London and I'm spending it with my dad, and then the rest of the time I'm with my mum, you know.
And so were they apart your whole life?
For the most of it, yeah, like from as young as I can kind of remember. Like I remember them together, but then I also just remember them not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So like I got to just kind of go between the two. And like, I don't know, for some kids, I feel like they're like, that might seem like, I don't know, like something they talk to their therapist later in life about.
Right,
like,
something that really hurts them.
Between here and there and da-da-da. I enjoyed it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
it was
like I didn't enjoy the fact that like your parents aren't together or whatever, but enjoyed the fact that like I got to see both things. Like I really, really am appreciative of it now. And even when I was younger, I was appreciative of it, you know? Yeah, I think it's had a profound kind of impact on my life and my worldview.
I guess I wonder that I feel like your parents must have been very confident in their decision to not be together in a way that passed a message to you that it was okay, instead of being conflicted. I think a lot of kids get damaged because there's this conflict that one of the parents wants to be, or there's something about us when the parents separate. I feel like it's all about the message the kid gets versus no message at all, or confusion, or I don't know.
It was definitely hell. It was definitely, It was hectic. It was super, super hectic. Like it was crazy. But like, I like, obviously as a kid, you know, you want your parents to be together or whatever. But like, aside from that, I recognized the benefit that I was getting, because like I'm in Ipswich and I'm with my friends in Ipswich, but there's like this whole movement of like grime music and garage music happening across the country, but the epicenter of it is London.
Yeah.
So like I'm getting to enjoy that part.
You get to go to London.
So I'm like this is great. Do you know what I mean? Like that I get to go there. Like it's kind of like whatever, consolation. Do you know what I mean? Of like, yeah, if they're not going to be together, at least I get at least like them not being together gives me access to this city, and then access to like this culture and this music that like I'm infatuated with.
Yeah.
You know?
I also think natural born winners make the best of things.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a natural born thing that I think naturally competitive or people who strive for whatever. There's a certain type of person I think that goes for it or not.
Yeah.
And I think that I see. So I ask all these questions because I was thinking about our conversation. We've never gotten to talk.
No.
Hung out with Benj.
Yeah.
Everybody at MDDN, but we've never actually gotten to talk.
Yeah.
But I've been following your whole career.
Yeah.
And what I notice about the music of the Bob Vylan music, and then you particularly personally, when I see you on stage, and I've seen you move through the world, and I see the messages you put out, and I see the way you move, it strikes me like as this person who really truly marches to the beat of their own drum. You don't feel like you're beholden to anything other than your art, your ideals, the things you care about. And it feels to me like you're open. You're like an open-minded person who could have a healthy argument with someone, but you have ideals, you have your own code, it feels like. Yeah. And I wonder how people like that become that when, I said this to Benj, from the first time we heard your music to now, we've always said it. That's one of those artists that's bigger than they know that they are at the time because of who they are. And that they're going to go on this long winding journey of like legacy, of building a legacy that's different from everyone else because they really truly operate in their own time, their own space, their own rules. And that's just how we've always seen you guys and your music and the whole thing. But also then sitting with you, it's reinforced. I go, oh yeah, I was right. It doesn't feel like there's some, you don't feel confused. You know, I sit with some artists and it feels like they're scared or they're stressed or they're worried about if this is going to do well or this is going to, or what should I do next? That's okay for someone to be on that journey. That's a different thing. When I sit with you, I'm like, oh, this guy knows what the fuck, where he's going, what he's doing, what he wants to say. And so I like try to get a little bit of a picture of like, oh, where you, like how you grew up to like try to sort out like, how does someone become who they are where they're not necessarily looking or questioning who they are?
Yeah, I don't know. Cause like, I don't feel like I've ever been any other way. So even as a child, I think I was like, it'd probably be called stubborn, or unruly,
strong-willed, or
but like I think I was just like kind of knew what I wanted and knew what I didn't want, and I continue to kind of know that in adult life. So but I don't know, like it can be it's a good, I think it's a good quality that I possess, that like I'm not much to the beat of my own drum and don't really feel a need to do what other people wish for me to do. You know, if I don't feel like it's in my best interest, or if I'm going to be conflicted with it morally, or if I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night, I just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I feel that.
But sometimes I suppose like maybe it gets in the way, maybe, you know what I mean, with other things, but I don't really know how to be any other way than the way that I am. And so I just continue to be that way.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for people to get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But I also, what you talked about like artists being scared and maybe like, confused. I think that's a natural thing for artists to have, and I have that sometimes, but I also think I'm okay without any of this as well. Like I had a life before Bob Vylan took off, and I'm sure I'll have a life after it. Like I've accomplished so many other things in my life outside of what I've accomplished with Bob Vylan, that I kind of feel quite confident that I could just do whatever do whatever I want. Like I truly feel like if I wanted to just quit the band today and go and do something completely different, I could find what I would deem success in that thing as well.
Yeah, you could be happy.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've kind of done everything in terms of like, I grew up kind of taking part in kind of in criminal activities,
right?
Which I managed to kind of escape, and like I was kicked out of my primary, what you would call elementary school.
Right.
And then I was also...
At what age?
10.
So you got kicked out of school at 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the last year. And then I started secondary school, high school.
Middle school, yeah.
Yeah. And I made it to the kind of towards the end of that, but then I got kicked out of that.
Kicked out again.
Yeah. And
all for crime stuff?
No, actually.
It
was just like, what they deemed as trouble. But
Fighting
there was...
or what?
Not so much fighting. Like there was some, but like I only ever fight now as if it's absolutely necessary.
Right. Protect yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Me
no,
too.
it's just like, yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, I feel like that's a given, right?
Yeah.
You have to. But no, it was just like whatever they, like stuff that they deemed of attitude or whatnot. But
right.
I also went to like very white, lower middle class school.
Right.
Somewhere like I bussed there.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it wasn't like, it's not like a private school or anything, but it's like the school in my estate, my area, wasn't necessarily great.
Right. So your parents or your mom or your dad was sending you to what they thought was a better school.
Boom. There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. So mom was like, yeah, that's a better school.
Which in concept's the right idea. Like, I'm going to get them to a better school. Yeah.
But like, I suppose it neglects the fact that like my experience at that school is not going to be the same as somebody else's experience at that school.
Right. Because at the other school, there's no one that like looks like you.
Exactly.
Has your like family background.
Yeah.
And then you're coming from this other neighborhood, going to that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were in your neighborhood, like school that wasn't as good, you would actually have more friends. Probably you relate to everyone.
There would be more understanding of where I'm coming from.
Right.
From the teachers,
totally.
From the administration down to the students, because the students would be somewhat of the same, like some of the same ethnic background, some of the same class and whatnot. Right. So, that was kind of an issue. And then like when I was kicked out of school, I was like that thing of that school to prison pipeline that people talk about. I was traveling through that. Like I was arrested 2 weeks after or so, getting kicked out of school. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, that's like a real thing that happened. Like,
There's a reason they have statistics.
Yeah, like exactly.
It's
like
enough
a thing that people talk about. I'm like, I was there, And then whatever, like, a couple of weeks after that, I was arrested again. And it was, kind of somewhat reinforced this idea of like, I suppose to a certain degree, I guess my path is picked for me, but I was always determined to not make that the case. But like, it just meant that I had to fight against so many things and so many people's perspective, so many people's opinions and
straight up things like I'm guessing you go to the school your mom or dad thought was a better school and you're dealing with racism.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you reconcile that when you have that early experience as a kid, right? That's traumatic.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're coming from a neighborhood where maybe you don't have to think about that because everybody's...
It's funny because like in my neighborhood, it was quite mixed.
Okay.
Sort of. But like it was mixed in terms of like race and it was mixed somewhat class.
Okay.
But we were all kind of working class, but there were kind of people that were a little bit better off.
Right, like they had like a nicer car in their house.
Yeah.
They didn't live in an apartment. They lived in a townhouse.
They live in
this or that
so
or whatever.
Like slight differences, but very slight.
Right.
Yeah, like going to that school, it was like there was differences in race, but there's also now differences in class.
So it's classism, racism.
Yeah.
Also, you're the kid that they know is traveling on a bus.
So
probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of us. So it's not like, it was a school that people did travel to because it was deemed a good school. But, I just found problems there,
Yeah.
And then, but, I kind of, I made it through all of that. And then, I eventually went to university, did my undergrad. And then I went and did my postgrad. I did my master's. So like, it's not like, like my relationship with education.
Got the degree.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
I don't have a degree. I barely finished high school.
But like it's like, it's not something that held me back. But some people were telling me like, oh, well, because you didn't get good grades or you didn't get any grades, this is, the options are not really open to you,
But you figured it out.
Oh yeah. I just finessed it, man. Just because I knew that my capabilities weren't tied to what these people thought. It was tied to what I believe I am capable of. If I believe myself to only be capable of what they hold me to be, then that's all I'll ever do.
That's, to me, the most important mechanism that we can develop in life is our own self-mastery, the power to master our thoughts and our belief systems. I had a different experience than you in Maryland in the 90s, in Southern Maryland, small town. But being poor, I didn't know I was until I got old enough and went to school and then started to differentiate.
Yeah.
Like how we file each other in these like hierarchical systems of like who has what.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like who was popular, who was this, who was that. It was a lot by money, by like who had a, and then get to high school and who has a car or who has whatever. And so you start to form an opinion of yourself when you get to the group and you get old enough and you start to realize, like, especially around like 12, 13, you like girls or you like this or that. And you start to really see how things, but I never saw myself as poor.
Right.
I always thought I was a rich man waiting to happen. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm going to be rich, man. Like that was in my mind. And the very early idea of success for me was just money. I didn't know how to think of it any other way.
Yeah.
I was like, so in my mind when I was young, I was like, one day I'm going to be.
But then your immediate surroundings, were all of the people kind of like in your neighborhood, they were all of the same somewhat economic?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was rural. So down the road would be someone with a big house and a lot of land.
Right.
But also they were like families that had these lands for long periods of time. They didn't necessarily have a lot of money.
Right.
But they had a big old
they've
house
got an asset.
and a big,
Yeah. And then you said that you didn't finish high school.
No, well, I did. I had to go to night school,
right,
and get my credits to graduate.
Right. Okay.
So I almost did it, but my mom, it was really important to her that we graduate. So we went and did that. And then we left home right after and started just trying to make it with our band.
Right. Okay.
And that was it. It was on.
And you headed straight to LA?
No, went to DC.
Oh, okay.
And Baltimore and went around that whole area.
Yeah.
For a few years.
Right.
Didn't move to LA till our third record.
Right. Okay.
We kind of had decided we wanted to try and get more into we wanted to understand the music business more.
Yeah.
And then we started, in 2004 on our third record, moved here. So been here for 21 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm from here, but I'm from the East Coast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I always admire people when I see like you. I've always thought you struck me as someone who feels like they know themselves.
Yeah.
Someone who feels like there's no doubt. And if there is a doubt, of course there's doubts, whatever, but like it doesn't feel like you're conflicted about what you're doing. When I see you on stage, and I was talking to Joey about the show, he was telling me about the opening of the show. There's like a meditation.
Yeah.
That's badass. No one else starts their show that way.
Yeah.
But think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're turning this into this group activity where everyone gets in line with each other so that they can participate in this hour or so of like energy. I'm like, of course Bob Vylan would do that.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a very special like brand of music you have.
Thank you. Yeah. Just been working on it for a long time. And I think like all of the things that I've gone through and all the things that I've been fortunate enough to experience, like they all inform it, like, because it could have all stopped at I get kicked out of school, I get arrested, and I find my way out of like the kind of the activities that I was into, and then I make the band. But I think like going to university for my undergrad, going to university for my master's, like all of that stuff, like having to like research, write dissertations, like helped me truly understand what I'm capable of. And it helped inform the music in that like I am researching and I'm developing a love for learning, where that love for learning wasn't necessarily it was present, but it wasn't necessarily nurtured when I was in high school.
No
and
one
primary
really
school,
nurtured it.
right? So when I'm left to my own devices and I can go and pick what I want to study and I can nerd out on it, then I realize, oh, I actually love this thing. And that then has like informed kind of like everything that I do. Like I read a lot. I I don't really watch tons of TV and whatnot. And like I try to consume things that I find enriching and like, culturally beneficial, educationally beneficial, and like I find myself getting more and more into certain things and I kind of nerd out on them, and try to learn as much as I possibly can.
Yeah,
and then
you're
comes out in the music.
very intellectual.
I think I have a desire to be
I think you are.
intellectual.
I think it's interesting to see your love for learning was not nurtured at an early age by the school system.
Yeah.
Which then you get kicked out of. And then you go through getting in trouble, get arrested, go through all that, find your way back to learning, which you probably were doing the whole time.
Yeah.
Searching, learning, end up getting degrees, 2 degrees, going through the highest level of education and finishing. If you look at that picture and you're like, you've experienced the spectrum of what education can be.
Yeah.
And if anyone was to ask you, hey, if there were, think about the expert groups they put together to try to improve the school systems, who should be in that group? You should be in that group. Experience alone.
Yeah, maybe off of experience, I think maybe there'd be some kind of research and to do, but I did all of that and then started the band.
That's right.
Right. Like, and, or rather like the band kind of started whilst I was doing my masters, we kind of started it then. So there is a whole life kind of coming back to what we're talking about of like, there is a whole life before this band and there will be one afterwards.
Yeah.
And because, even simply just the fact that like I have plans to do my PhD at some point.
Right.
So like,
what would that be in?
that's one of the reasons why I haven't started to do it because I'm not too sure what I'm going to do it in, but I know I'm going to do it and I know that I'll complete it.
Do you have a school in mind?
I had one, but it's changed. And then now I am kind of, because I feel like it will be in some time to come, I kind of am entertaining and flirting with the idea of possibly doing it out here.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Because that could be quite interesting.
Like a UCLA or a that's cool.
Like that.
Good schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and fun place to live while you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so like I've been kind of thinking
cool.
about that. But I was going to do it where I did my masters because that's a good school.
Where was it?
Goldsmiths.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, in London. But like that, I want to do that at some point in my life, and so. The band is fantastic. It's great. Like I love it. But the doubt, it's just music. you know? Like the doubt and the worry and is this right to release? Is this? It's like, on a business point and a business side of it, yes, you have to like strategize and plan things, and we can't just be throwing songs out or whatever.
Strategy is an important thing.
Exactly. Right. But like,
you want a good shop. You want to run.
Yeah. But it's not that important in the grand scheme of
it's not.
Like
it
doesn't
world, seem like such a challenge for you here to conceptualize what you're doing with music. You're doing it, whereas it feels like you're more excited at the possibility of the challenge of getting your PhD.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And I'm also like more excited at the challenge of the business side of the music, than I am maybe. With I love the creative side of it, but I love the business side of it.
Yeah.
Like I think like I watched Ryan doing his job and I think like that's a sick job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a dope job to have.
Yeah.
And I see like Joey working and I'm like, this is cool. Like you're putting things together and you're making things happen. Like you can see those. You can do it with the band as well, but like I love dealing with different people. I love kind of striking different deals. I love buying and selling. Like it's something that I've loved since I was a child. And I think if I had the access to, if I had like educational access and financial access and just certain access to resources as a child to like people that had jobs other than what you would call a blue collar job,
Yep.
I probably would have found my way onto the trading floor.
Yeah.
Like I feel like
I
that
feel the
would have
same way.
been something that I would have done.
I feel the same way. If I had grown up in my mind like New York City or
Yeah.
gone to private school or whatever, I would have found my way into business in a different way.
Yeah.
But just like you, I was always, me and my brother, me and Benj were both obsessed with understanding the business model.
Yeah.
And it felt like to us, all the other artists were so conflicted about making money. And we were like, it's not about money. Money is the byproduct of a model that works.
Yeah.
So it's just an ancillary. It's like, there's other things too than money. There's other things you could count, like even more important than money. If we're zooming out and looking at a successful functioning business, we could say a bunch of other things, and money is one of the scorecards. And you go, okay, great. The business model works. Like you make more than you spend.
Yeah.
That's simple. But then what are the functioning parts of the organism and the organization, and how do you scale it and grow it? And like, we're sitting here many, many years after us saying the same thing. The music actually is easy for us. We can make it.
Yeah.
We're not conflicted about that.
Yeah.
It's also not rocket science, or like, I'm not saving lives. I go, oh yeah, cool. I like that song. Let's put it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It should be enough for me. And that's kind of how we always operated with us. Like we're artists, like for sure, but we're also people who want to learn and be smart and work hard and not limit ourselves of what's possible for us to do. So when we started our company, that was the idea. It's like, we're going to stop. We're going to pour all our time, energy, resources into this thing that we have, this idea we have that we think we can achieve. And then, 12, 13 years later, here we are. The most amazing part is meeting people like you that would also be you're also an amazing manager. All artists, someone in the org of a group has to be the manager. I always say to artists, like, you're your best manager. Our company is just your partner. At some point, it scales to where you can't do the day-to-day of this business. You also need partners in the business for lots of reasons. It's a bit like a gang.
You also need to, I think, like, know what it is that you ultimately want.
Right.
Because
that's good.
As a band, what we ultimately want is to be able to make the music that we want to make. Because at the very, very foundation of it, it is an artistic endeavor. It's an artistic pursuit of like telling a truthful story, expressing ourselves, and like, especially as the lyricist and the producer of the band, I want for that to be as honest as possible. Now, if I am in a situation where somebody is able to tell me I can't speak about this thing, or I can't say this thing on stage, or do this, now my artistic expression is being stifled. That's all. That's, as a band, that's all we want. As a vocalist of the band, that's all I want. I just want to be able to make the music I want to make, speak about the things that are important to me, speak about my life experience, and put the music out there. And if it resonates with people, then it resonates with people.
What would you say the best part of the Bob Vylan journey thus far has been? It could be a bigger idea, or it could literally just be a moment or a memory.
That's tricky because, that's tricky. I mean, so I think it is a general feeling, like the general feeling of, like, you mentioned it earlier about a lot of people start bands, but to get it to a point where it's successful enough that, like, hey, will you come and play this festival?
Yeah, will you come play Coachella?
Exactly. And this festival is like, it's Coachella.
We want you here.
Or it's Glastonbury or something like that. You're like, okay, yeah, like that's a hard nod. Place to get a band to. That's a very hard place to get a band to.
And I'm sure you meet other bands and they're like, they fuck with you. They're like, yo, we like you guys. Like, that's cool too. When other artists are like,
exactly,
yo, we fuck with you guys.
And so that general feeling of like, we have gotten it to a point that most people don't get it to, just because the odds are stacked.
The odds of standing out and being recognizable as a brand, as a band, as an artist, is very hard. Yeah. I could literally show you 1,000 bands right now that you've never heard of, that are all actively trying.
Yeah.
And getting somewhere, like
Yeah.
trying to get into a band where you say the name and someone goes, oh yeah, I saw
Yeah.
those guys. They were there, or I saw them there, is very hard.
Very hard.
And to me, that's the beginning. When you've gotten to the point where you guys are, the legacy is now starting to grow, right? The legacy, the lore is starting to grow. And now it's a matter of time, songs, shows,
Yeah.
and making artistic moves,
Yeah.
whatever it is you feel.
Yeah.
If you follow that, your legacy is going to be this naturally unfolding thing.
Yeah.
But to get to the place where you're, hey, will you come play this cool festival, or you have bands, will you come tour with us or whatever? Like that is, I don't think bands understand how hard it is.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of bands that are like, you know, it's so talented and their music is great, but they don't get to that point just because like they didn't have the right song at the right time or whatever it is. Like there is so much luck attached to the hard work and the skill that also goes into it, because it's not just one thing or the other. There's someone better than Kobe somewhere, but they might not make it to the league.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? And we might never hear of him. So there's an element of luck to all of this that makes it a little bit kind of, I suppose, it makes it a little easier to say like, well, we're not necessarily special. We've worked hard. We've got good music, but there's a lot of bands that have good music, but we also got lucky.
You showed up for luck.
Yeah. And that's it. And like, you know, timing and preparation just met. But that general feeling of like, we've gotten this band to this point, that's one of the greatest things that we've experienced on this journey. Just like that general feeling of like, wow, we're here. But then the other thing that I suppose maybe is more somewhat tangible is, you know, like having my daughter come to some of the shows and her seeing me on stage and her seeing like awards and whatever, and like the kind of markers of success, the accolades and whatnot. Her seeing like people stop us in the street and be like, yo, are you Bob Vylan? Oh, can I take a photo? And like, but then also again, her knowing that like dad went to university, got his undergrad, got his master, like she can do anything.
Yeah,
she has that access that I didn't have access. She has the exposure that I did not have. There's nobody in my family has a master's. My younger brother was the first person to go to university, and he went a year before me. Or 2 years, I was messing around in the streets still, you know? But then like, I don't know anybody that was successful in a band or in, do you know what I mean, music. Like, I don't know personally any, like, she will know that she could do anything.
Yeah, the entire spectrum is there of like which direction you want to go.
You want to go educational and like you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, like whatever these kind of typically educated roles, you know what I mean, in the world.
Or entrepreneur or artist,
exactly.
Like all of it is on the table.
Because she sees it all. She sees Dad's gone this direction, and he did the education route and he'd done what he needs to do there, and he will continue to do that at some point. He's made a successful band, and so there's the artistic route that he could go. Or with making the band, there is the business side of what Bob Vylan has created as well, and like, you know, releasing the music on our own record label and having it chart and you know, like having a successful kind of touring industry around us, you know, as part of the band. Like there's a business aspect as well that she can do. And I'm already seeing parts of that play out in her, you know. She's a hustler, man. She's
got some natural
already, you know, like she understands net versus gross,
right? And
did at 9 years old.
Important.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's very important, you know.
Yeah.
So like that sort of thing is like, that's really where I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
None of this is for me, it's for you.
Very smart. Very, very, very cool to see that start to develop in your kids, where they all have their natural inclinations, but to see those things emerge is cool. When we have our kid, we look at them and they're perfect to us.
Yeah.
We just love them. And we would never want them to put themselves in harm's way. And that's my worst fear, is for my kids to get caught up in some dumb shit. But when I look back on my young life and I think about when you tell me you were in the street stuff, whatever period of your life you were, do you ever look back at that time and almost like shudder to think in any given moment, like my life could be completely different because of the situation that I was in, whether I chose it or not. Right. I look back at that time in my life where I would say I was young and kind of figuring out the way the world works, and certainly learning some things out there in the world, in the streets, around some stuff that I go, whew. I mean, I would never want my kid at 18 or 19 where I was, around where I was.
Yeah.
It just scares the hell out of me. And I turned out okay, actually.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I learned like a lot about human nature, and I learned a lot about that actually continues to serve me in this day. Like a gut sensation on someone is something that I think you only learn by being around certain things. And you can kind of decipher like who the good people and the bad people are. You can see all the different kinds of people. And I think that something about that experience is great. At the same time, scares the hell out of me to even think about my kids going anywhere near danger to learn anything.
But I suppose the hope is that like you've been there so they don't have to go there.
Right.
And I have to trust that. I can also see that she's smarter than I was.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I hear that 100%. Like it is a terrifying thing.
Do you think that your own growth and personal growth, I think about this too, because I think I'm right. I think something about all the work I did to grow, like I'm not saying I'm more evolved than anybody, but I will say that I work very hard on progress and on personal growth. And I think that I got my kids into a position where their minds are almost like acclimated towards progress and growth versus not really even knowing progress and growth exist. Yeah. Which I do think some people live in a state of not growing and not even really knowing that you can grow and that you can find information and that you can find a better way to be or to do things. And I think, do you think that all your experience put your kid into a place where they have a natural understanding of like doing things, achieving things, growing, figuring things out, or maybe even we just pass it on to them?
Yeah, I suppose like it's so hard to say what's nature and nurture because, like if, they're just seeing what, their parents are doing, then you have no idea the effect that that's having on them. Also, like, you can have siblings and you both turn out very different. You could be very close in age, I'm sure, but like you can have your similarities, but you could both turn out very different, even though you're watching your parents do the same thing. So there is an element of like nature of just like this person's personality or they have the general disposition towards this thing or to be this way. I think like, when I look at my daughter, she's blessed that like, she has a fantastic mother and she has two parents that love her an incredible amount and, like are working very hard to give her what she needs now, but also what she needs in the future. Be it, I suppose, like, some sort of financial stability or like, like we're saying, access to seeing the world in a way that certain other children maybe are not fortunate enough to be able to see. Most people aren't. So, it's tough. Obviously, you want to keep your kids safe. I mean, like, even now, I think the things that I went through, they affected me in some terrible ways and they affected me in some really positive ways. That thing that you're talking about of realizing, like getting that gut feeling on somebody, when that is integral to your survival, you become very good at doing it. Because I suppose it's like, it's the law of nature.
That's
because
right.
Those people that are not good at doing it, they do not survive.
Yeah.
And so like if you're around people that are dangerous people and you are not good at realizing to stay away from this person, what to say and what not to say to this person, how to maneuver around this situation, like, if you're not good at that, you don't make it out of that. Right. And if you're good at that, hopefully, you survive long enough to find your way out of it. And those kind of things, like it's kind of messed up, I suppose, that you have to go through those things to learn that, because I would have loved to be able to learn it without some of the experience I had to go through to learn it. But it is what it is, and like it continues to serve me. But I get constant reminders of just how easy life can change,
That's
you
right.
know, and just how quickly it can change.
Mhm.
I mean, like, yeah, it's just,
The older you get, the more you value, I think, just life itself.
Yeah,
You
for
realize
sure.
how precious it is. And you worry for kids, young kids that I worry for kids I don't know. I see where hopelessness gets people. And I see when people don't care about themselves because they've been taught not to.
Yeah.
And then what they do is put themselves into situations where they put themselves at risk. And that's the thing that probably breaks my heart the most about maybe just being my age and being able to look back at it and see young people who have been neglected and they put themselves into situations where they're not valuing the preciousness of their own life. And by the way, some of them don't have a choice, but I just see that and go, I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position to have my kids. I have 2 teenagers and I look at their lives and 180 degree different than my life.
yeah.
They know a little bit, they know enough.
But how do you? Because because how do you deal with that? Like you say, you grew up poor.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get your children to see that you have to like work for things and that it's not all given, considering that they are growing up in a very different environment to what you grew up in, and therefore the things that they have to do to survive, they're nowhere. They're
Not the same.
they're not the same
Yeah.
as the things that you had to do to. So how do you like navigate that?
That's a really good question. I think number one, how you treat all people, your kids absorb it.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been lucky to have the experience of working all these like jobs before, I got to make it with my music. I worked so many jobs and so many different kinds of jobs that I just had to do to pay the rent. And I got a real appreciation for people. Not only if I was like waiting tables, the people that tipped me or the people that were just nice to me.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, people that weren't, people that were rude, people that were whatever. Also people I worked with, in different jobs. I worked in like a shipping facility unloading trucks, and I worked with different guys themselves working 3 jobs to take care of their family. They had kids or they had all these different, like at a young age, gaining a real adult understanding of what you're up against.
Yeah.
And then going into music, it felt like it was easy.
Yeah.
And I started making $100,000 a year or whatever in music. And I was like, sheesh, you're paying me to do this. And I had a real affinity for the business because I had worked so many jobs. I mean, we tried to count the jobs, but we had probably had like 30 jobs before we finally made it with the music, and we could just do that. I think me and Benj both had a real appreciation for the life experience we had from 14 to 20 years old, because we had to pay the bills. So we had to help my mom pay the rent, pay the this or that. And every $50 was hard to come by.
Yeah.
So we were always short on something. Car was always breaking down. So those years of growing up when my dad had left and now we were tasked with kind of helping manage the house, my older brother had ran away. And then he ended up putting himself through college. So I really respected what he did because we never thought college was on the table.
Yeah.
So to see him do that was really inspiring, which I also think led into us going after it with music, seeing him do that. So I think going from there to then being a dad, I do think that like there's something about manners, no matter where you are, to say, please, thank you, to look at someone when they're interacting with you at their job, I think has always been a very prominent, important thing to how we operate. And I really do believe that like, no matter what financial level you get to, no matter where you're transacting, you can always transact the same.
Yeah.
And I think something about that, it's more important than the transaction. I see it with my kids because they do have good manners. Like I really care about how they represent themselves. And at first it's like, well, you're representing your family, but really you're representing yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's what you got. And so who you are in the world is going to be the person that everyone interacts with. And regardless of their bad manners or their bad attitude or their preconceived idea, I'm not going to let that pull me out of my value system.
Yeah.
As simple as it sounds, I've never stopped working ever.
Right.
And so I share that with my kids. Like when I'm working on something, it's an open forum.
Yeah.
If they have ideas or
That's cool. Do you think you had to find a certain level of success in order to kind of let go of that, let go of that thing defining you? Or do you feel like you would have found that even had you stayed at a certain
It's a good question.
level?
I actually think everyone can find it at different levels. And I think the sooner you find it, the more successful you can be in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I think you can actually have a very long, successful, healthy career if you come to terms with the idea that you don't need it. It's okay to want it.
Yeah.
Not at any cost, at the cost of you.
Yeah.
Giving up the essence of who you are. And it's what I see that you have gotten so right. And that's why I know you're going to continue to be more and more and more successful, because you're not actually chasing the success. You're building it, and you have a code. And I think that's what people need. They need a code to like live by, that they go to sleep every night and they sleep, and they can sleep knowing that they didn't have to lie, cheat, or steal to make their way in the world, because it's sustainable if you can be yourself. And I think that where you see people implode and die is when it's an unsustainable thing to be someone else.
Yeah.
This character that you let get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think while it took us a little longer to get it, because I think we had self-esteem stuff and all that, I do feel if I had gotten it sooner, I would have made some decisions different.
Right.
And not to say my career would be any different, or like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, but if I could go back and change a few things, I would.
Yeah.
And I think I would have been better. I think I would have I don't know, if I could go back and redo a couple things, I would, and it would be for those reasons.
Right.
Not to be bigger.
Yeah.
Just something that I think would be a little cooler.
There'd be things that you would change, like career-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
decisions and
A
stuff.
couple little decisions, couple little things.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting, man.
Yeah.
Because like we have this thing between us where like we're always talking about the things that we say no to, and not necessarily the things that we say yes to.
Right.
And that is sort of like, I think like the fact that we are so happy to say no to things when they don't serve us. I don't think we're going to get, we're not going to come out completely without any kind of regrets or whatever, career-wise. But like, I hope that the fact that we're happy to say no to certain things will limit the amount of things that we look back at in the future and say like, well, maybe career-wise, I would have went back and changed that and did that differently. Because at the moment, I feel quite fortunate that there hasn't been anything career-wise yet. But like, as things grow, I'm sure things get harder to say no to.
Yeah.
I think for me, the hardest part at the moment is juggling tour with my daughter.
Yeah.
Like that's the hardest thing.
That's real.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. And kind of figuring out like, how do I do both? And they're kind of at odds with each other.
It'll always be hard, but that's also what will continue to define you as a father.
Yeah.
If you didn't care.
Yeah, I guess there's that. If
Be a
I was just
different
out on
dad.
the road, it's like, peace. Like, like
That's one.
see you when I'm back.
That's
Like, but like,
one way of
like,
being.
the fact that like it kind of, it weighs so heavy on me every day. And like to the point where I was like, do you want to come to Coachella? I will like, you could come to Coachella. I can like, I figure out a way, you can get there, and like I'll make sure you get home and and I'll sort it out with mum. She's like, nah.
Yeah.
She's like, my friend's coming over to sleep over, so I don't really want to miss that. So I'm like, okay, cool. But like I'm trying to find ways to do both. But yeah, it's hard.
You'll continue to win and lose that battle. But the most important thing, I think, and what I see with my kids now as teenagers, and I went through that too, when they can feel it and they know that you're conflicted, that's it. That's the message.
Yeah.
Is that I'm loved.
Yeah.
And like, also they know they can call their dad anytime.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
But that just says exactly the kind of dad you are. Because there are certainly other versions of people just, hey, peace, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll see you when I get home.
Yeah.
And then like, that's real too.
Yeah.
And that's, but that's what keeps us the human alive.
Yeah.
Is the suffering.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate that she's a very understanding,
Yeah.
so emotionally like intelligent. You know what I mean, that she understands and she gets it as like, this is Dad's job.
Yeah.
And if I want that new thing that I want, he's got to go and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next for Bob Vylan?
Well, we're working on new music and stuff at the moment. We're in a position at the moment where it's like we can kind of do whatever we want, like I feel quite comfortable in the fact that like we could just tour for a while and play festivals and whatnot, and not necessarily release like a whole bunch of music, but we could also put out an album. We could also just put out singles if we wanted to. It feels like for the first time we're in a position where we can make a decision based off of what we want to do, and not necessarily what we feel like we have to do, of like, we need to put out another album, or we need to go on tour, we need to do this thing. But for us, yeah, it's just continue making music and like being creative and being experimental and expressing ourselves. And then when we feel like, oh, we got something, we pull it together maybe in a body of work and create an album or put it out as a single. It's just feels very free at the moment.
Yeah.
So
you guys have that freedom because you're independent.
Yeah, there is that as well. There is that. And there's also that, like, that we're maybe exploring, like, do we want to continue that independence? Do we want to continue that independence in the same way? Or is there another way that this independence could look?
Right. Yep.
And so that's also quite interesting to look at that, of like, got a little taster of it on the last album of, doing like a distro deal and stuff, but still releasing on our own record label and administering the budget and stuff ourselves, which is dope, because like it kind of satisfies my business side, my business part of me. But yeah, it's just it's kind of up in the air, but in a very fun way.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope artists listening to this, a lot of artists listen to this, I hope they get properly inspired by the idea that you can build that.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't imagine that for themselves. I think it's just a place of understanding, like, it's possible. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You got to be down to work, but it's so satisfying when you do it.
But yeah, we'll be touring for sure, because that's something that we love to do, and we're gonna get out here as much as possible.
Great.
But yeah, just continue to have fun with it.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for coming, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to Artist Friendly. We really appreciate it. If you like the show, you can also follow us on Spotify. You can follow us on Instagram at artist.friendly. And you can watch us on YouTube and Veeps. Leave comments. I always read them. See you next time.